Hi guys, and welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. The fly you see in the vise is a Leggy Cruncher. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hook in the vise is a Hanak H200 barbless hook. This one's at size 10, it's on a heavy wire and it's finished in black nickel. The thread I'm going to be using today is from Simplify. It's the classic wax thread at 6/0. As you can see, it's black. First thing I'm going to do is get some more wax onto the thread. Now, winter time's probably, we're in the teeth of it now. We're starting to get more time on the vise as we're spending less time on the water. Now, I've got an ambition to do some new fly boxes over the winter for my Stillwater stuff, and this is one of the flies that I'm going to be including in it. So I've got my bed of silk down, and the first thing I want to do is add in my tailing fibres. Now, for a cruncher type fly, as this is, some people would use a pheasant tail. Pheasant tail is a great material, but what I find with pheasant tail for tailing fibres is it's very brittle, and if you tie in pheasant tail, after a few fish, you tend to lose your tail. They just fall away. So what I do is I take a cock hackle, I'd spit it out, Lindsay, and I take some of the fibres from that and I use that as my tail. Now it's much more forgiving than pheasant tail, and what I want is about the length of the shank of the hook. So I'll lay that up, get a couple of turns in, see how it's looking. Yep, it's looking okay, and then I can clamp that down into place. Now I've come back to as far up the fly as I would like. Just going to remove the excess at the front here. Now as I come back down, I'm going to add in my rib, and the rib on this occasion is light gold. It's 0.1 millimeters, just something a little bit different from your usual silver or copper. Just give it a little bit of a different feel, if you know what I mean. So I'll grab my length of light gold wire, and then I can finish off tidying up that front bit. Now I brought my thread slightly back up, and what I'm going to do is come back to the pheasant tail that I showed you earlier. I'm going to use some of this to create the body of the fly. Now this is one that's been dyed slightly, and I'm not going to tell you what the dye is because my wife would tell me it's the wrong colour. I think it's slightly brown, but you be the judge. She's probably saying it's maroon, but we'll not get into my domestic colour arguments. Now, with pheasant tail, I always like to take off the little tip sections before I tie it in. And then as I'm tying in, I want to pull all the fibres nice and tightly together. Like so. And once I'm content that's in place, I can bring my thread back up to the thorax area. Now I'm going to get a few extra turns in at the thorax here. Then I can simply grab my pheasant tail fibres, hope that they don't break. I'm only going to put a little bit of pressure on, then I'm going to use the rotary function on my vise to just bring that body up. Now if you don't have a true rotary vise, you can just do it the old fashioned way. Take your pheasant tail round manually, and then as you get up to the thorax, you can secure it in place. Now the reason I like to use the rotary function on this rather than doing it how I would have done it in the good old days is simply that you can see better how it's laying down onto the body of the fly. When you do it just turn over turn, you're not quite sure what you're getting at the front end, the end you're seeing, should I say. So next is to bring over the rib Try and keep your rib spacing as even as you can. It's not always difficult. If you want the rib to stand out more, you can use a thicker wire, and you can go the other way. Let me just show you what that looks like. When you go the other way, it does stand out a little bit more as you're taking the rib away from you. You can see that standing out a bit more, but I don't want that. The rib on this occasion is really only to hold that pheasant tail in place, but it just depends on what effect you want to achieve. I just want it to, for a bit of belts and braces on my pheasant tail. The other way you can do it, of course, is you can put a little touch of super glue down onto the body before you bring your pheasant tail up the body, and that would protect it. So keep tension on your thread, grab your wire and spin that away. So that's looking not too bad. The next thing then is we're going to add our legs. I'm going to invert my vise, grab my legs that I have pre-tied here on the stalk. Now I'm only taking 4. It doesn't need to be a huge clump of legs. We're not tying a daddy long legs or a flat daddy pattern here. We're just going to get the appearance of legs. Now I'm going to excuse my fingers while I just get it into place. I'll move them out of the way so you can see what's happening. As you can see, there's not many, and I've just pulled them up so they're not trailing all the way back here, if you like, on the vise. They're where I want them, at the front here. So a couple of turns in front of them legs, then I can come in and remove my excess. So that's not looking too bad. It's not perfect by any stretch, but what fly ever is? Davy McPhails, I know. Excuse me. So thorax next, and I'm using some of this beautifully dyed peacock herring. It's dyed magenta. I don't know what my wife would call it. I'm going to call it magenta. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the thick bits at the bottom away, and then I'm going to capture that in. Now I'm tying it in thick end first, and I'm going to come back to approximately maybe 2mm back for the eye of the hook, and then what I can do is build up my thorax, which is already looking pretty chunky because I tied in my pheasant tail legs. So it's looking chunky already. I just want to encourage it a little bit more. Now I can see that the peacock herring here has misbehaved terribly on me, and I might have to come back round with that. So I'm just going to come back, twist the peacock herring up so that it stays together. I want to bring both strands to the front of the hook. Don't ever be afraid to go back on work if you're not content with it, and that was really was misbehaving, and it continues to perplex me. So I'm going to come back again. I'm going to just bring it into position until it sits where I want it to sit. Remember, you're in charge of tying the fly, not the other way around. So once you have got it where you want it, a couple of turns in front, and you can simply take that away. Yeah, peacock herring is a brilliant material, but it can misbehave. It has a habit of it. Okay, so next I'm going to add my front hackle. On this occasion I am lucky enough to be using a whiting cape here, which produces some fantastic feathers. Now I've already picked a feather out, and I've kind of prepared it, if you like. Now, what I like about the whiting feathers is, other than the fantastic shades of colour you get, is the stem in the middle here is really thin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it in at the stem, like so. 3 turns should do it. And then I can grab my hackle pliers and catch in the tip. Now I'm going to sweep it around the front 1 turn. I've just damped down the thumb and forefinger on my left hand, and I'm going to use that to simply ease back the materials. Now, the reason I've cut this in at the stem is I want the longer hackle fibres behind the thorax, in front of the thorax, while the smaller ones are coming towards the eye of the hook. It does make a difference to how the fly looks at the end up. So I'm going to bring that thread over to trap in my tip section. Now you can see I've trapped in a few fibres. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it though. So I've released my hackle pliers. I can see this tip, which I will have to remove, but at the moment I'm going to sweep everything back. We're going to start in at the eye of the hook, and I'm going to bring my thread all the way back. Now what I'm looking for now is that little tip section, which I can simply pull away. Just get that hackle sitting how I want it to sit. And then I'll grab my whip finish tool and secure the head. Now you can secure the head with whatever poison you seem fit. On this occasion I'm going to use some UV resin. Fairly pleased with how that's sitting. Hackle's just about bang on. I like my hackle to sweep back and kind of join in with the tail. You get that teardrop effect with nymphs that just represent so many different aquatic creatures. It can make a very suggestive type fly. So I would fish this, if permitted, as part of a team of flies, 2 or 3 on a floating line. Now because of the way it's been tied, the hackle, it's going to sink very slowly down through the water column, so it's ideal for those highly pressured fisheries. So I'll grab a bit of my wire, and I'm just going to use the wire to clear the eye here before I come in with my UV torch. Nothing worse than being on the bank and trying to tie a fly on that's clogged up with glue or resin. Always clear your eye at the vise. Saves you a world of pain on the river or the Stillwater bank. And there we go. Little cruncher. That is sure to catch you some fish. Thanks very much for watching. If you're curious, you can see how to use this in the video on screen now.